HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Square. If you run a restaurant or business, Square has the tools to help you stay connected to customers. Learn more at square.com/go/ferment.
Hello and welcome to
Ferment About It
on heritageradionetwork.org.
I'm Mary Izette.
And I'm Chris Kuzmi.
And we're your co-hosts through this journey of all things fermenting.
Found right here on heritageradionetwork.org and all places podcasts are. Today is episode 249. It's our return to Ferment About It. This is our second episode since the pandemic started. And our second episode since April 4th of 2019. We're really excited to be coming back. And starting all this stuff. One thing, the light in the darkness is that we've kind of rekindled our love of fermentation and had some time and some bandwidth to be fermenting at home. And we're excited to talk about how where that leads today.
Also, we were able to do this because one of the things that Kuzmi did early on in pandemic is he basically built us a home studio. So we are in our apartment in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Recording this, and it's pretty cool. It does sound really good.
There's some back stories on this. I mean, I used to have a home studio before I let you move in. I mean, before I welcomed you into my home. I love you so much. So glad you're here. Before I turned that bedroom into a kind of storage place for all stuff. But anyway, I'm rekindling my home studio life and playing a lot of saxophone and some sampling and some other stuff for a band with loud. But that also got us to a place where we can get some decent sound. For our podcast, Ferment About It, and Ferment.
Cool. So let's talk about what we've done, what's happened since the last episode.
What has happened since the last episode? Well, we talked about the pickles that I had, and the pickles are tasting really great. They're crisped up. I had stopped them from fermenting any further, and I threw them into the refrigerator. I would say that for this one, so we only put that fresh dill that we talked about into it, a couple of bay leaves and garlic and a chili pepper. Flavor-wise, I would pop another few chili peppers in there. I like higher heat. I didn't use any other typical pickling spices. I didn't use any coriander or mustard seed because I kind of wanted to focus on the dill, the garlic, and the zing of the lactic acid. And I think I would like it. I would like more pep in the step. I'd have spiced it more.
Yeah.
Even though I like them, they're lovely, simple. But I'm digging pickles.
Me too. I want to make a relish too with your pickles, but that's for another day. So I did get my fermented chili paste with my mixed hot peppers, and so that is starting. I'm going to check it. It is in a dark place, and I will check on it again in 3 weeks. Oops, I forgot. I got to add a calendar reminder because I can't ever remember these things. And hey, pandemic days have no time. So. The other thing I've been playing with, so I got obsessed with pralines, like the candy that have pecans and sugar and a little bit of cream. I think you can use sweetened condensed milk too. And I've been making them in the microwave, these cheater pralines, but they're really good. I made a dark chocolate version, but I wanted to bring miso into it. So I made my first batch of miso pralines the other day. I used this black miso. I don't know what it's called. that Ken gave us.
Ken
But
Fornataro.
yeah, Ken Fornataro. It's really good. It's super earthy and very, very dank. I guess I would call it dank to a degree. Anyway, it has a ton of flavor. So I used that. I didn't
I loved it. It was delicious.
yeah, but I'm gonna play with, we have several kinds of miso in the fridge right now. And I want to play, I just added the miso in there and then cooked the whole thing together, but I'm actually going to infuse the cream with the miso the next batch, which I'll probably either do today or tomorrow, in the next few days, I guess. But that's been pretty fun, and I'll share that recipe when I perfect it.
What do you think one of the challenges of, I know it's not, of making pralines?
Well, the real pralines or cheater pralines?
The cheater praline. Like what? Because it's
So
a little more sensitive, right?
No, but you should really, okay, so my grandma made candy. And so I kind of learned to make candy when I was little, and I've always had like I've made candy many times in my life. And you really should just do it the old-fashioned way and use a candy thermometer. There are ways you can do it without doing a candy thermometer. The cheater microwave way, you're just totally guessing on timing. So actually, the last batch of pralines came out a little bit more like
This is why I'm bringing it up.
praline brittle and not true, pecan brittle, not true pralines. But yeah, that's a thing. It's just not using a candy thermometer. But pralines are really relatively easy. And it doesn't matter. Look, honestly, like they're still going to taste good as long as you don't go too far and burn them or make them so hard that they're absolutely inedible. Although they'd still be good. You could make them in, do an ice cream.
But that difference in timing is going to affect the texture.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's basically how hard it's going to end up in the end. And
Yeah.
I love peanut brittle. I love brittle, so I didn't mind that.
Yeah.
You were mad
So
that it
miso
went too
pecan
far,
brittle
but I
is
loved
the
it.
other thing.
Yeah, right. Either way, it's win-win. You like praline or brittle.
Yep. But that's been pretty fun. And then this week, I think I got a lot of asparagus. So I'm going to ferment some of that asparagus. So I'm going to look at that later today too. I have part of the day home. So I can I've got some other veggies to, blanch or freeze or ferment that need to be done something with, which we're going to talk a little bit more. But let's bring our guest. This is the appropriate time to bring our guest on because she can help me with all of these things.
What?
Mm-hmm.
There's one person you could go to find out how to ferment all these wonderful, lovely things in the home of your small apartment in Brooklyn, or name anywhere you live on planet Earth, maybe universe, depending environmental situations and gas.
Fermenting on other planets. That could be a whole fictitious episode if we wanted to do a spoof. Anyway, let's bring our guest on. It is Cheryl Passwater, our good friend and fermentationist extraordinaire. Hey, Cheryl.
Hello, how are you guys?
Pretty good.
Fantastic.
Getting fermented.
Yes, we're back.
Yeah.
So,
hell yeah.
I actually, at the beginning of this, so we talked about this last week, but Kuzmi and I are working full time. But I did actually have a few days off. I think I had like 6 days off at the beginning, kind of towards the beginning of this when we got our the Fifth Hammer to go room settled and moving. And I have a couple days off here and there now, but I'm still working full time. But one of the things I got really into when this whole thing first started is all these online cooking classes. I love cooking classes. I've taken cooking classes in person. I find even if it's something that you kind of know how to do, you're always going to be inspired and learn new tips and tricks. And there's a lot of dishes that I don't have much experience with, especially if we're talking a lot of foods that are made around the world that I didn't grow up with, that I'm not as familiar with making, that I love to eat, but I don't have any experience in. So I took a bunch of online classes, and one of the online classes was a fermented nut cheese class with Cheryl, and it was absolutely great. It was given through the Brooklyn Granary. I was super inspired, and Cheryl is teaching a bunch of those. So that was really great to talk to Cheryl and be able to take an online class. And we're going to talk a little bit more about, you're still doing the online classes. I think they're great, especially because one of the great things is that not only, you don't have to be in New York City to take them. You can take them from anywhere around the world. And that was the cool thing that I saw in my online classes is that we had people join us from New Zealand, from Europe, from all over the place. And we're all able to share this experience of making something together in our kitchens all around the world and learning something new. And a lot of times you would have kind of an online virtual meal or snack fest afterward. And it's super cool. So anyway, I think that's awesome that you're doing that, Cheryl, and you're doing a bunch of neat classes, which we're going to talk about. So what else have you been up to in quarantine?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Lots of teaching. I've been doing quarantine.
I know I have a tendency to really ramble these days. It's true.
Well, you know what's so funny is like I know people who either they're bored to death, or there are people like me who seem to be working all the time. It's like such a weird. I mean, I worked hard before COVID, but man, I just feel like all I'm doing is working these days. Yeah, I mean, a lot of workshops, obviously. I've been. I'm going to be teaching at the TED Talks conference coming up, so I've been working on preparing for that,
Very cool.
which is a pretty, very exciting, thing. I've been teaching at some fermentation festivals online, the Florida Fermentation Festival. Ken Fortuna, who you guys mentioned earlier, just did a little sort of online festival with Cultures Group. So I was doing that. I did Preserving Abundance Festival out of Atlanta, Georgia online. So I've been doing that. I've been getting ready for, I'm keynote speaking this summer for a couple fermentation festivals that, I think yet to be seen if that's going online or going to be in person, but, working on my keynote speeches. So I've been doing a lot of that stuff, inventing a lot of new like recipes. I mean, I've had some nice time to play around with ingredients and, hacking the system, adjusting workshops and, doing some recipe editing and, a lot of workshops. It's been really, I mean, amazing. We've been teaching, I would say on the average between 4 and 7 fermentation workshops a week right now, which is a lot of workshops and a lot of teaching. But, like Mary said, people from all over the world, it's been really fun having students from Scotland and New Zealand and Arizona and South America and all over the United States and London and, getting emails from people who are like, or Instagram messages where people are like, oh my gosh, we've always wanted to take a class with you. We've never been able to, and now we can. So, I think that's been really, really fun and, what a great time for fermentation, especially,
people can find all this out on contrabandferments.com, right? All the places you are. So,
we've been posting workshops like every, about 1 or 2 weeks at a time. And, we're super behind on our blog, but we are, answering emails, answering questions, encouraging people to ferment and get out there. We're helping to supply some ferments for, some local community things in our neighborhood and neighboring neighborhoods. So bringing ferments to, people who are facing food insecurities right now. We're hoping to do more work with that, sort of going forward and going into the summer, selling ferments to neighbors and random people, because we have, more than enough ferments, sitting around right now. That's for sure.
What's been one of your favorite, like new recipes or recipe fermentation hacks that you've done recently?
Oh, what have I been really into? Well, I sat in on Kirsten Shockey's workshop at the Florida Fermentation Festival, which was actually collecting tree blossoms and using those as wild yeast, and you take them and ferment them in juice, and you use those as a starter for making cider. So that's been really exciting for me to sort of just a new way of doing it. And, I've been getting into some cider making, and I've been making a lot of vinegars, especially. So I would say those are 2 things that I've been spending a lot of time on. I've gotten much further and much deeper into, aging vegan cheeses. So that's been sort of a fun process to have a little bit more time to dabble with. And, miso, as you know, is also a favorite ferment over here at Contraband Ferments. And so, I've been doing some various miso experiments and a lot of Asian pickles and things like that. So
cool. I want to ask, so the online, speaking of online fermentation festivals and other online classes, I know that most of the classes that I've taken through Brooklyn Brainery and also a few other places, I took a class through League of Kitchens. We're all either most of them are on Zoom, a few on the Google platform. what I think the Florida Fermentation Festival was on Instagram Live, if I remember.
Correct.
What's kind of your take? What do you recommend if people are looking at doing online, giving online classes or taking them? What's your kind of take on the different platforms or the feedback, or kind of how easy or how effective all of these online platforms are?
Totally. I've done some things I had a couple workshops, corporate workshops actually, for companies, and they only use an app called Blue Jeans, which was okay, except for I can't see everybody. There's no chat available. So it was like, okay. I mean, I prefer Zoom because also the way my sort of station for teaching is set up, I actually can't totally reach my computer. And so, that for me, the nice thing about Zoom is I can see what everybody's doing, and, there's a chat available. And so what I do is I leave my chat open because I can see their questions, and then I can read the questions, sort of answer to the group. And I found that to be very effective and helpful. And I can be hands-free because I'm got my hands and stuff. And, other than that one night that I spilled hot sauce all over my laptop, I'm trying to not, avoid destroying my technology. So I mean, I've found Zoom to be pretty fantastic. And, it's like a pro account is, like $15 a month, and you can password protect it. And they just upgraded all of their security. So actually, it's even more protected now than it was at like the beginning of COVID. I think Zoom is having some issues, but I mean, I'm really enjoying that. I've been playing with an app also called Jump Rope, and making sort of mini food videos that'll start going up online here in the near future. And really like that. Some people like TikTok and things for making sort of like short movie videos. So, even if you want alternatives to live teaching, those are two of the things that I like to use.
Cool. So let's talk about your classes. Well, first of all, I love the fermenting nut cheese class that you gave, and I would love if you could just take us through kind of the basics of fermenting nut cheeses. I do see. Wait, hang on. I've got a bunch of. Your next fermented nut cheese class is online. It is Monday, June 8th. From 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time via Zoom. It is through brooklynbrainery.com. So I would highly recommend it to everybody. The cool thing about the Brooklyn Brainery class is that they're very affordable. So you can sign up for the class. This class is $16, which to me is absolutely invaluable. You can learn everything about fermented nut cheeses. So I'd like to if you could just kind of like take us through the basics and hopefully inspire people to learn more and to want to start this and sign up for your class and go for it.
Yeah. I can't recommend the Brooklyn Brainery enough. They've been our home hub for a really long time. And they actually have 2 brick and mortar locations. So, I was really happy that, we were able to move online with the Brainery. Workshops have kept them going. They're keeping us going, which is amazing. And making them as affordable as we can, knowing that, some people have jobs, some people don't have jobs. There's a lot of things, moving parts. But yeah, fermented vegan cheeses, I started making them because there was a big period of time where I was completely dairy free. And, even now I'm a little bit on the lower dairy end of life, and my partner doesn't not do well with dairy at all. And so, when I started making fermented vegan cheeses, I was keeping it really simple. And even when I make hard cheeses now, they all sort of start from the same place, which is making a fermented soft cheese. And how you do that is, really simple. I usually tell people to, choose whatever kind of nuts they want to use. Cashews work really great. I like macadamia nuts a lot. Almonds work really well if you soak them and sort of like pull the bitter skins off the outsides of the nuts. And then, it's really like taking your nuts, soaking them. And what soaking does is it starts the fermentation process, but also soaking our nuts, just like when we soak beans and grains, helps to break down the anti-nutrients that are sort of in the outer coating around the nuts. So, soaking them, and then, what I do is I strain the liquid and throw them in a blender with some kind of some salt, and then some kind of starter culture. You need something to sort of jumpstart the fermentation process. And so that could be, breaking open the powder of some probiotic capsules. It could be using water kefir or Rejuvelac is another really great way. You can start it with like kimchi and pickle brine, but then the cheese just tastes like kimchi and pickle brine. And I don't find that to be very of appealing flavor. So I like to use sort of a neutral, sort of tasting starter culture. If you wanted to, even though it has dairy, you could use whey as a starter as well. But yeah, adding a culture, blending everything up together into sort of a thick kind of peanut butter toothpaste sort of consistency. And then, throwing it into, I like to put it all into like a nut milk bag and inside of like a colander. And then I like tie the nut milk bag. I put in the cheese and tie it up like to a spoon. So it's sort of like a nice tight sort of pouch. And what that does is it allows the water and the whey, or sort of like this vegan whey, I guess you could call it, that sort of develops to strain out. So you're allowing it to make kind of a thicker cheese. When you blend it, you can add a little bit of water as necessary. And the nice thing about that straining process is, if you get a little too much water in your initial blending, it's going to allow it to drain out. So I usually, put it over a colander that's inside of a bowl, tie it up in that nut milk bag on some kind of stick. And I usually kind of jam it in the side of my colander so it hangs. You could alternatively like jam it in the side of like a cabinet. Everybody's gonna hack something some way or another. And then I usually throw a hand towel over it and I let it ferment. And you can leave it for 24 to 48 hours and letting it sort of just hang out and ferment and straining. And then once you've hit that sort of time marker, I pop it out into a bowl and I like to add a little bit of like lemon juice, nutritional yeast, maybe some more salt if it's needed, and, mix it to sort of your taste. And then you have the basis for like a nice soft cheese, put it in the fridge. And, I find usually they last in the fridge for around 6 weeks. And usually if they start to get a little weird, it's usually like they get kind of like a little like a pinkish coral sort of color kind of hanging out on the surface. That's usually kind of their sign that they're on their way out the door. But they're these great soft cheese. But then you can take that soft cheese and do other processes where you can age and harden cheese. You can make it so you can grate it. I've done, beautiful cheeses that sort of resemble like Humboldt fog and have charcoal kind of running through the center. And, you can roll them into logs, add herbs, do whatever you want to do to them. And it's a nice, sort of starting point for making fermented vegan cheeses.
Cool. And again, if you guys want to go further down this, the Brooklyn Brainery, it's brooklynbrainery.com on Monday, June 8th, 7 to 8:30. Although this is a class that you've been teaching relatively frequently, right?
The fermented vegan cheeses. Yeah, every once in a while, but we were teaching all kinds of stuff. I have a new workshop coming up this Sunday called Fermented Ice Cream and Popsicles.
I'm signing up for it. I'm very excited.
Yeah, it'll be really good. And, kimchi, and we're doing fermented vegetables. We've been doing fermented hot sauces, gluten-free sourdough, dosa, injera. We have a lot of different things. Fermented condiments have been really popular right now too, making your own fermented ketchup and pestos. And, now that herb season is here and hot peppers, going into summer, it's like, what a great way to use up, the bounty of the lands and the farmers and all that.
For sure.
I don't want to move on too fast from the cheese or from the cheese talk you just did. I've got a couple questions to that, but we will cover them just after the break. We're going to take a quick break. Thanks for listening to Ferment About It. Cheryl Passwater of Contraband Ferments.
This episode is brought to you by Square. I'm Mary Izette, co-host of Ferment About It. For restaurant, bar, and taproom owners, it's not business as usual right now. As people stay at home, we're all trying to find new ways of staying connected to our customers. At Fifth Hammer Brewing, we had to convert our tap room to a to-go room and move from serving pints to selling 4-packs and crowlers to go. If you're a business owner, Square wants to let you know it has tools that can help you shift your business. One of these tools is Square Online Store. It lets you set up a free online ordering page with curbside pickup and local delivery. Square Online Store is free and very quick to set up. I was able to set up our online store within 24 hours of moving to a to-go model. With an online ordering page, you can easily update your menu with descriptions, ingredients, pricing, and more. Really whatever you want. It's fully customizable. You can offer curbside pickup and no-contact local delivery. It's also very easy to train your staff on. They will be able to receive, fulfill, and provide your customers with a contactless pickup in no time. Learn more at square.com/go/ferment.
Welcome back to Ferment About It, episode 249 with Cheryl Passwater of Contraband Ferments. We were talking about nut cheeses, and she just gave us a quick, great rundown. And Cheryl, I've got a couple questions dissecting part of the things in the process. First, you mentioned Rejuvelac. I just love saying that word so much, but what is it? And is there a quick one, too, for a home enthusiast?
Rejuvelac is just, it's sort of like the water that's been fermented out of grain is kind of the easiest way to explain it. I think the more traditional way to do it is barley, but, I've done Rejuvelac with rice and quinoa and other grains. And, you put an inch or two of grain in a jar and you cover it well with water. And then you let it sit and ferment for, 8 to 12 hours. And then when that liquid starts to get, kind of foggy and cloudy, you strain off the liquid and you add more water to it, again, covering it really well. I usually if I do like an inch or two of grain, I'll make sure I have like 2 or 3 inches of water, above the grain. And then you kind of keep repeating that process, and you might have to do it 3, 4, 5 times. But what you're doing is you're waiting for the cloudiness to sort of dissipate and for the liquid to become bubbly. So again, you're just repeating the same thing on the same set of grains where you're sort of covering with water, letting it sit for a few hours, straining it, doing the same thing, straining it until it becomes bubbly and active. And it's a great sort of, neutral way to sort of have a liquid that's fermented and inoculated with microbes. And, then you can use that to, jumpstart other ferments. I use it sometimes when I make fermented ketchup. I'll use that as a starter or, just depending on what kind of things you're doing. It's really fantastic. It's really versatile.
Awesome. I think that your answer ties into my next question, which was, when do you decide? So you said the nuts, you want to leave them to ferment between 24 and 48 hours. And so as a brewer, like, we're always like, there are ways to test when it's done, when it's ready. How do you decide when it's ready or where you want it? So you just mentioned, by sight and seeing some carbonation, at least in the Rejuvelac sense, but how does this relate to the nut portion and when you decide? And how do you know it's working for you?
Well, I think it's different things. I mean, obviously the Rejuvelac's going to show you more kind of key signs that it's alive, bubbles and stuff like that. But you're using a little bit of that as a starter when you make the cheese and you blend it up. So, because the cheese is like hanging in a nut milk bag and it's sort of tight, there's not going to be like a lot of signs of necessarily life, partially because it's nuts, and partially because it's all tightened up. But, it will get a little bit fluffy. If you open up the nut milk bag, it's like, stick your finger in and taste it.
That's what I'm going for.
It's like, a really great, yeah. I mean, the longer it ferments, the more sour it's going to get. But, what I find is 24 to 48 hours is sort of good. And also with this nut milk, this nut cheese is that in the summer when it's insanely hot and humid, and not having air conditioning, living in a New York City apartment, sometimes that 48-hour period ends up like getting some mold on the outside of the bag. I don't have problems with it the rest of the year. It's just high summer when it's really, really hot. You have to really keep an eye on it. It's like taste
okay,
it.
so let's say, tried this for the first time, but I'm really busy, not used to fermenting so much. And then I get that mold. How do I know whether it's good mold, bad mold? What do I do at that point? Is all for naught? Do I have to start over?
In fermentation, mold does not necessarily mean something is bad. I always tell people in workshops, like, step 1, red, black, and neon colors equals dead. Don't eat it. But, everything else, blue, green, gray, white, things that grow on bread or cheese, put your Depression era grandma helmet
Yeah.
on and scrape it off until you get to something that looks good. And sometimes what I find is like the molds will grow on the outside at the bottom of the bag, but not on the inside. And then I just sort of scrape out the inside, the cheese out of the inside of the bag, where everything looks good. And, again, I only really have ever had that problem when it's like, New York City, 105 degrees, humidity, terrible, terrible hot summer, and not having air conditioning in my living room or my kitchen, does not necessarily help with that. But usually, when it's high summer, heat speeds up fermentation. So you ferment things for a little bit less time. And, sometimes in the winter, I got to go a little bit longer because it's very cold, and cold slows down fermentation. So yeah, you just have to sort of watch for signals and, scrape it off if it's really funky. But, red, black, and neon colors equal dead. So I would just throw away the whole batch if that happens to you. I have not had that happen with cheeses, though. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
And some ways of preventing that is making sure that you if you're using Rejuvelac or you're using any probiotics, you make sure that you use enough of them to make sure that the goodies outweigh the baddies.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, adding a ton more, you don't need a lot to start the process. And it's relatively, doing this initial soft cheese is a short ferment. And so because of that, generally you're not going to get any kind of weird growth. And I really believe when you do, it's just that high heat, high humidity, the microbes can't, they can't keep up with the speed, right? That the heat is encouraging. Yeah.
I like your phrase, Depression era grandma helmet. So we're in an interesting time of food insecurity. And,
Let's talk about fermenting in the time of food insecurity that we are in during the pandemic.
Yeah.
That leaves it wide open. Mary has this as a topic for us to go to, but when I think about that, like, what does this make us think of, and like, where are we going that we haven't gone before a little bit? I mean, where are the wise choices to make if we're on a food budget? What are the smart things to do? I mean, that's a lot of this fermentation.
Yeah, but I also think,
history of fermentation is that preserving vegetables.
Yeah, but I think, especially here in New York City, where we have been grocery stores, all stores limited, the number of people that can go inside. So, oftentimes we're waiting in line in order to get in the grocery store. You have to time your grocery store. I think I meant, your grocery store visit very carefully. We're not, we're not going to the grocery store and browsing for groceries. Like, we make a list, you get your groceries and you go. And I think, because of that, there's a yeast shortage. That's why so many people have turned to sourdough. And really, if you go to your grocery store and we've been stocking up. So buying in bulk, when I go to the grocery store, I buy 3 giant things of kale, and then, I'm freezing some of it, or I'm buying lots of vegetables so I can process them and freeze them. And fermentation is one way to preserve the bounty that we get from, either our CSAs or our co-op visits or our grocery store visits. And I think that's something that people are really exploring these days. And it's a great way to really keep food that has a high nutritional quality and is also delicious.
Definitely. I mean, this is a subject that overall I've always felt passionate about, and even more so right now. I think there's a lot of things to look at. It's like, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were just like really negative against all these people who are making sourdough and how many of them after COVID will not keep up with it, and this and that. And I was like, I think it's great when anybody wants to learn something new. But also what I'm seeing with all this newness, or this sort of, experience that we are all having, which is, a pandemic, is that how many people are realizing they don't know how to cook? How many people are realizing that they needed to get back to the root of food? And I think this has been, this was something that was already going on pre-COVID, but now it's bigger, in my eyes. And as somebody who's an advocate for food, who cares about food communities and farmers and local farmers, is that more now than ever, this is our opportunity to shift the food system that was already broken and, bluntly very fucked up. And so, what better time? It's like when COVID hit, I looked at my partner and I said, I'm going to have to make my classes way cheaper than I normally make them. And I'm going to have to make them some sliding scale, because it would be ethically not okay for me to sit on the information and knowledge that I have and not share that. And I believe in my responsibility in the world that I live in and doing the kind of work that I do, that part of my responsibility is to be able to bring that to other people. And, it's like, what more of an important time to be supporting CSAs and food cooperatives and farmers markets. Grow NYC just got a $250,000 sort of matching grant from Bank of America. So, right now they're taking donations online, and Bank of America is going to match up to $250,000 what they raise. But, things that they are doing are making produce boxes for low income, neighborhoods, people who have lost their jobs. Like, they are jumping in and thinking about food insecurities. CSAs, we're part of a CSA, and one of the big conversations that came up in our CSA early on was, okay, how do we make up for these, people who have lost their incomes? How do we make this attainable for people? And, there is no more of an important and better time for us to be looking to and supporting our local farmers, a good food system, a system that the government is not supporting, or barely supporting, eating real food, like in New York City, 90% of food desert neighborhoods are getting their food from bodegas because the grocery stores can't stay open. And so, and that's we have major food disparities, and not just in New York, we're talking all over the country. Whether, and all kinds of locations, not just cities. And so, to me, it's like, well, how do we bring those food to people? And how do we teach people to, blanch their kale and freeze it? Like Mary was saying, we do the same thing.
Yeah.
Or like canning, which is a different process, but a still very important process. This is a time to look back at what have our ancestors always done? How have they taught us? How do we get back to real food, real systems that are better for the environment, better for our health, using fermentation, that we can take a cabbage, and when we ferment it, we triple the nutritional value of that cabbage. I know when I make sauerkraut that I'm tripling the vitamin C, I'm tripling the vitamin K. Sailors used to keep sauerkraut on ships, and they would feed it to their sailors because they often would get scurvy, and scurvy was a vitamin C deficiency, and they knew that sauerkraut would treat the scurvy. And so it's like, I do, not to mention probiotics and microbes and the human microbiome, all these other things, but, and what we know also, and this is not just like COVID, it's like all illness and disease begins in the gut. And a lot of people walk around with, major nutritional deficiencies that, cause disease. So it's like more than ever, being able to preserve our vegetables, ferment hard-boiled eggs and have them around, and having all this, amazing flavor, and also like food waste, I love, Misfits Market and Imperfect Foods, and, sort of these businesses that are thinking about food rescue and food waste. And it's like, the stuff that's bruised up, or, it's just sort of on its way out the door, and you're like, I'm not sure if I want to eat that. And I'm like, ferment it. Just ferment it. Like,
yep.
We have more than enough food. We are just a society that is like, give me what I want when I want it. I want to have my takeout, snap it with a finger, I want what I want when I want it. And it's like, we're all getting a lesson, and but you can't always have what you want all the time. And how can you use what you do have? How do you, using preservation as part of that.
I want to comment on two things. The first thing is
Cheryl, that was awesome.
Yes,
You're the
I
best.
totally
Love
agree.
you so much. Right on.
I want
it's
so
true,
now-
though. It's so fucking true.
No,
Yes.
yes.
You're absolutely right.
Kills
Two
me.
things is talking about, people having to cook all their meals at home right now, or, a lot of people are getting takeout and delivery still. But, I think the other thing that this can do is have people give people more of an appreciation for the food that they are buying. Next time you're buying that sourdough bread from the green market or, that's available at your local grocery store, wherever you're getting it, hopefully, people will now have a much higher appreciation for how much work and passion goes into that.
Yeah.
The other thing is it is CSA sign up time in New York City. I don't know if that's the case around the country or wherever you live, but for us in New York City, now is the time, the CSA that we have signed up for. Actually, I didn't do it because I kept procrastinating, but I'm doing it this afternoon. Starts next week on June 3rd. And I think that's pretty typical. So if you are going to sign up for a summer CSA, please do so now. They are open and taking, taking signups.
And there's lots of other opportunities. It's like Iliama Fish Company out of the West Coast. They do a salmon share in New York City once a year. We always get that. It's enough salmon for us to kind of live out our year without taking up our whole freezer. And it's very affordable. Grow NYC is doing fresh food boxes. There's the farmers markets are open. There's so many great ways to source food right now. And also on flour, I have to say, I've gotten more emails about people are like, I can't get flour. And I'm like, because you just want to buy the crappy flour. Find a good mill. Find somebody who's growing non-GMO good flour. It's like, yeah, you're going to pay more, but it's, better for you. So it's like, I love that we don't have to have all this fancy stuff in order to ferment or make great food. It just takes some time. But you know what? Some time is self-care.
Yep, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, we wanted to talk. Tell us about the miso tempeh natto book.
Yeah, that came out.
Oh,
We're gonna.
Yes.
We'll have an episode that's more dedicated to this, so we're not going to get too deep into it.
Yeah.
But what do you have? Yeah, tell us what you have in that book.
Yeah. So our friends Kirsten and Christopher Shockey, who are amazing, they put out their third book last summer called Miso Tempeh Natto. They have their fourth book coming out soon on cider making, which I'm so excited for. But yeah, Miso Tempeh Natto, it's sort of all things, exactly that, bean and grains sort of ferments, shoyus, all kinds of stuff in that book, miso bread, whatever. But Kirsten had asked me to be one of their meet the makers and contributors for the book. So I was able to contribute to that, which was an honor. So, I had a recipe, basic recipe for our heirloom cranberry bean miso. And then also for what I call tasty paste or nut and seed based tasty paste. So nut or seed misos. So that was really fun. Also, that's a great ingredient that sometimes I use in my fermented vegan cheeses. So miso is a great addition when you're making vegan cheese. And so I was able to contribute to that book. I'm also going to be in a new book coming out in another year by Dr. Julia Skinner on the sort of the history of fermentation, which I'm really excited to be part of that as well. And what an amazing time for, making things.
For sure.
For sure. I'm going to give another shout out to the Shockies because I used their book Fermented Vegetables, which we have at home to do kind of base the chili paste that I made this week, hot chili paste around. And the asparagus that I mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to make some asparagus kimchi, which they had in their book. And then I bought this, I talked about this last week, but I bought an Arrow garden in this pandemic time and I love it. But I have Thai basil and the Thai basil is going nuts. And I was going to make Thai basil lime shortbread with a passion fruit glaze, which I might still, but actually I'm going to make Thai basil, fermented Thai basil paste first. Yeah. So I'm going to make that this week and then I can make shortbread next week.
Yeah.
I'm all about this.
And
those are my weekly projects.
That Thai basil will be really good in some fermented ice cream also.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We've been talking about that. We've been talking about coconut ice cream with the Thai basil.
All right, I'm making it today so the Thai basil will be ready for me to go on Sunday when I sign up for your class.
Already.
Oh, my God. It's so good. I might have to come get some from you. I haven't been able to hunt any down yet, so we could do a little plant trade.
I know.
Social distancing.
Yes, although I don't, it is an aero garden, so it is small. I mean, it's still a lot. It's a good Thai basil for me, but I am actually going to set up a larger hydroponic garden because we don't have any outdoor space or even a balcony or anything. So I have grow lights on the way. So I'm going to set up, and Thai basil is definitely something that I'm going to grow. So I will have an abundance at some point.
Yeah, we'll do a trade because we actually have have a veg box. We have a hydroponic grow light system as well in our apartment. And so I've got lots of tomato plants and all kinds of stuff growing. So yeah.
Awesome. Perfect.
Also got very nerdy.
I know, although I will say I might do some kind of trade with you or a purchase of, I don't have a kombucha or water kefir. Do you? And I bet you have water kefir grains. I think that's another thing I'd like to get restarted.
I would probably have all the things you need.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So let's talk because I would love to. I think I want to get some water kefir going.
Absolutely, for sure.
Water kefir, anti-milk kefir.
We also, now we have a car, so it's easy to.
The magic of transportation in New York City.
We had to.
Cheryl, thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Thank you for episode 249 and being our awesome guest, awesome friend, and awesome co-host. Occasionally with us here on Ferment About It. We missed this, and we're excited to get back into it. And I can't wait for NYC Ferments to start meeting up again. And
Monday.
We're meeting online while COVID is happening, and so next Monday, June 1st, next NYC fermentation meetup. So 7 p.m.
Now that it's an online meetup, is this kind of like open to the world if they wanted to like kind of peer into NYC Ferments?
I guess so.
Discuss it at the next meeting.
It's going to be a fermented frozen treats fest. Okay, awesome. I'm into this. And actually I haven't been able to because I've been working Mondays in our to-go room, but I actually will be able to join this Monday. So I'm super excited. Also, for all of our listeners out there, we would like to hear from you. What are you fermenting during quarantine? What fermented foods are you cooking with or snacking on? Or what fermented foods are you aspiring to do? We have a new Google Voice number that you can leave a message on, and we are going to play these in the coming weeks and probably for, ongoing. Our number is 917-409-8704. Again, that is 917-409-8704. Please call and leave us a message. What are you fermenting during quarantine? What fermented foods are you cooking with or snacking on? And we'd love we might play them in the next few weeks.
That's right. Thank you so much for listening, and find Cheryl Passwater at contrabandferments.com.
Yep.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Cheers.
Ferment About It.
This program is powered by Simplecast.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.